I enjoy the fighting game genre. I do have specific tastes when it comes to it, and I prefer games that are more accessible to newcomers as I'm not a hardcore fighting fan. I'm more of a casual player that appreciates the genre. Soul Calibur 2 was what really sucked me into this. I found it to be accessible and unique with its set of characters and different weapons along with its memorable music. After Soul Calibur, I wanted to try other fighting games to see what else was out there that I might like. I gained confidence through Soul Calibur and wanted to see what I hadn't played yet. This led me to find the Tekken series, which I ended up really enjoying, along with the Dead or Alive series. I preferred the 3D fighter until the Injustice games came out, and I just fell in love with the execution of using the DC Comics in a grand and epic fighting game. To me, this was amazing as I love the DC characters and the game was really well done. With me continually and slowly expanding my fighting games that I played throughout the years, I do like to try different ones out along with looking forward to different sequels. With that, a fighting game came along that caught my eye at PAX East that was tucked away between other game titles within the Sony section. I enjoyed a few matches with friends and I like the idea of having different fantasy characters as your fighters. Let's find out if Omen of Sorrow is worth your time. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you my review for Omen of Sorrow. Omen of Sorrow is a new fighting game that fills its roster with famous monsters and fantasy characters.
Counter!
Having only briefly played this game at PAX and enjoyed the few matches that I played, I was at first happy to see the different modes available for single player and offline play. Omen provides a story mode, arcade mode, practice mode, versus, survival mode among others. The story mode features 3 different stories you can play through, and I felt like the potential of having 3 different story arcs to experience was promising. But like with this game as a whole, the concept is very interesting, but the execution is rather rough. There are some voice cutscenes. I'm sure their intention was to provide the motivation of the players involved along with the background on the world, but they do not work. Visually, the cutscenes do not do much to really keep you interested, and the lines being said don't really help either.
Where lies the rotten fruit of the bowels of the first sinners? His smile shall bring forth the Savior of the dead, so that he may crawl among the worms that survive beneath his feet, and promise them threats that no man can see. My will shall be his, and the secret prophet's last words shall bring forth my new birth. All will be as told by those who have already seen it, and the mortal enemy of the...
Most of the story is delivered through characters talking to each other within an actual battle arena. This really makes the presentation rather boring. Characters look at each other and exchange lines with some minor actions in between. I am fine with reading within video games, even with all the modern expectations. Reading fits well for an RPG due to its grand nature and substantial and additional information it can provide through world building, like reading additional dialogue between characters or reading a book that you found within the environment, or the whole game is text-based because it's an indie product. But reading within a fighting game feels like it just doesn't fit with the high energy of the game itself. These scenes really felt flat and lifeless and didn't really help to bring me in. As a result, I feel like the story did a very poor job at hooking me into the adventure. I do not know if it was a combination of the story being poorly told along with the world building, or because the game failed to capture my interest, but either way I just did not enjoy the story. I couldn't finish all the 3 stories because I found them to be rather boring. Within my first minutes of playing the game also, the game crashed on me, but Omen did provide some unintentional, funny moments.
serious?
Before we move on to the gameplay, I also experienced a glitch or bug that caused the narrator to say her last few lines again during cutscenes. This really came across as lazy, and I wonder if this game had the appropriate QA. Either way, it did result in some more humor.
This will be humanity's first punishment. First punishment. Thy rod and thy staff comfort him. Request of me, she will answer, and I shall make nations your inheritance, and the end of the earth your possession. Comfort him. Request of me, she will answer.
But how is the actual gameplay? The gameplay is serviceable and can provide some fun. Like I said, I played a few matches at PAX and I enjoyed them, but I started to see that with extended play sessions, it showed that this game didn't really have enough to really keep you playing for a long time. The roster consists of some famous fantasy characters like Dr. Jekyll, Frankenstein's monster, and Dracula. Each of the characters do have fun special moves, along with fun power moves that are kind of like those super moves that you see from Injustice.
Die, monster.
Fallen!
This will show you. This one will have.
Fallen!
I'll show you. You have been judged.
There are some neat systems at play here, like how you can get some of your health back after you've been hit if you quickly can attack your opponent. But after I played more of the single player modes, I noticed that the AI was an issue. From what I could tell, there wasn't levels that you could choose from to be able to have the AI as hard or as easy as you wanted. So you are stuck with whatever the game has available to you, and you can't change it. I found that it was rather easy to spam attacks at the AI to be able to overcome most of my encounters. The lackluster AI hurts all the provided single player modes since you really don't have the option to fight anyone else more interesting or harder than you. Fights themselves also lack personality. The characters mainly just grunt during the fights. If the two characters threw lines back and forth, that would have helped to bring some much needed personality to it. Lines are said at the end of a fight, but they are often too quiet and you're definitely going to miss them. There is an online mode along with a few unlockables to earn, but I don't think you're really going to be motivated to play this game very long. I usually do not focus my review on the price point of a game I'm covering. I usually assess the game, and as a result, I'm providing you with an assessment is this game worth your time? One game that might be expensive to one person might not be for another, which is why I choose to focus on is this worth playing, whether you buy it, rent it, or get it on a sale. But here with Omen of Sorrow, I feel like the price is relevant to the discussion. Omen of Sorrow can provide some fun for a bit, but it does have many issues, and it's going for $50. This is way overpriced for the product you're getting. It would be one thing if the presentation was a bit dated and the gameplay was solid, but here the gameplay is lackluster, the presentation is not good, and it has some performance issues. I wanted to compare Omen to another recently released $50 game. Shadows Awakening is an action RPG gem that was released back in September. It is a single-player only game that provides a fun story, interesting gameplay mechanics with the use of character swapping on the fly, and a long runtime. It does have a few issues, but overall provides a good experience. Shadows fits that price point, where Omen feels like a game that should have cost around $20 to $30. I know this stuff is different depending on the person and what they value, but I wanted to present this here to show you that Omen is not worth the price that it's asking for, and it's most definitely not worth your time. As I was playing the game, I thought there were a few areas that would potentially help the overall experience. If this fighter tweaked itself so it was more of a B-movie horror type experience, then there would be a level of camp, and I think that would help to interject some fun into this experience. The game has a pretty good roster of classic monsters, and I think this would have been a great opportunity to pay tribute to the horror movies that made these classic monsters so memorable. Pay tribute to the Hammer films and take subtle jabs at the silly ones. I think a more tongue-in-cheek approach and attitude would have really helped here, and increase the level of violence. Some of these characters are capable of brutal acts, and the game should go all out with using them. Let me see the werewolf rip someone apart, because as the game stands now, it needs more work to be able to be something worth experiencing. Omen of Sorrow is not a good game. The story mode failed to grab my attention and hold my interest. The fighting can be fun for a few matches, but I found myself losing interest with that as well. I think this all stems from the lackluster presentation of the game. While the super moves do have some character to them, the game needed more to really set itself apart from its contemporaries. I may be able to choose Dracula to play as here, but I don't feel like he acted nor felt like the character. The characters lack personality to them, making them seem like very boring versions of these classical characters. I do hope this team can take what they have learned here and make a better game or sequel. The concept of playing as these characters within a fighting game is really interesting. Those big fantasy names can really draw in someone into the game, but the game needs to be able to stand on its own and has a fun experience. I sadly cannot recommend this game, and if you really want to play with these characters, I would highly suggest that you go into character creation for the Soul Calibur game and make them there.